Hello. So this evening, this is a very artistic piece. The reason I say that, there's no real formula for how this is done, unlike when we did the enhancements to make the image more 3D. That was in part straightforward and in part to taste. This is purely to taste. Now, maybe you've seen a magazine cover out there that you liked and you want to make it look along those lines for the image. Or maybe you just see something about the person and there's just a certain amount that would go uh, to make it look like a magazine cover. So, what we're looking at tonight is I have three images here. We're going to deal with just two of them, but you can see the before and after. Um, on the left hand side is the image before the retouching, on the right is the image after. You see I've made some changes to color and lighting for this one. And we're going to do this one in Photoshop because it's going to be done a little bit differently than uh, what we've seen before. So we're going to go back to this first image. This one I'm going to show you how to do the change up in Lightroom. So what we're going to do here is the image has already had its enhancements to the musculature. And if you'll notice, we take it back out here just a minute, you'll be able to see that it's already a little bit more on the blue side. Now, one thing you will notice, and let me show you with this image, is just changing the contrast on the image. See how it changes the color of the image? It made it darker, but all we're doing is changing the contrast. And already we've made it darker and we've changed her skin tone. So if we reset this, that's what it was before. We make our two little changes and look at how much different the skin looks. So part of it is still making sure that the person looks natural. And part of it is going to be making sure that we've got the areas that we want sharp, the areas we don't want to be sharpened, to not be sharpened. I took a little bit off her face and her hair because of the way it was showing up, left her eyes and her lips sharpened. So now, if you look at a cinema image, they have a tendency to be a little bit more on the blue and yellow side. And let me show you what I mean by that. So within Lightroom, there is an area called color grading. Now, if I were to take these shadows and make them blue, I want you to notice where I am on the color wheel. The opposite color would be yellow. So just coming out of orange into the yellow. And if I make the same change there, they kind of complement each other. Now, this one's easy. We can turn it on and off. And you can see the difference in, let's look first at the skin tone. And you can see she looks a little bit more yellow, but we've added blue into the shadows. And we'll probably be able to see that a little bit more in the outfit. All right, you can see the blue showing up there a little bit more. And it's important that the muscles stay without going to the blue. And you'll see that they still look good and they look natural. But the shorts have gone more toward the blue spectrum. So color grading allows you to make those kinds of changes. And the nice part about the color wheels is you can see the complementary colors. So if we were to go just yellow, for example, on the highlights, that's what we end up with for a look, which really doesn't have much in the way of a balancing point to it. But once we add that blue to it, now we have that contrasting color because we've got the opposite sides of that color wheel. And you can see what comes up. You could, if it was your preference, go a different route. Maybe you want her to be a little bit more on the red side, and you're going to balance that out by putting the shadows more into the green. Now, these are spectrumed so that you can change how much you get. But you can see that just doing that, we've changed and given it more of a green hue. Again, this is going to be very dependent upon what your client wants and what they want to see. I like the cinematic versions, which is more along these lines. And you still got a good skin tone, but look at how the background changes. You get more of a contrast from the suit as well. And now we're going to change over and go work on the other image. So let's take a look at what our starting point is going to be here. We're going to work on this image. I like this image for a couple of reasons. Because it gives us things to work on here. From a photographic standpoint, there's many things I don't like about the image, specifically the fact that there's all that junk in the picture. Doesn't mean that everything in the background has to be shot against a solid background. I like there to be some items of interest in the picture as well, but it's very distracting. You've got that bright image there. You've got another bright image under here. So while it's been modified to be sharper and to bring out that musculature much better, look at how the vascularity comes out in this image. What I don't like about it still is that background. So we change over here. And now we're in Lightroom. What I did was I created a group. So there's the before and there's the after. Within this group, I did two things. I blurred that background a little bit more, actually a lot more. As you can see there's the before, there's the after. But it still leaves some bright pieces that are distracting. Then I just drop the background down a lot. You can still make out that there's a background there. You can still make out some of the pieces from it, but it's not as distracting as it was before. Now, the nice part about groups in Photoshop is you'll notice this little piece over here on the side is a mask. I had Photoshop go and grab him, and it came out with a pretty good image of just him. What a mask allows you to do is it only applies things where the mask is white. In this particular case, it's inverted, so rather than applying to him, it just applies to the background. And I could actually take that down just a little bit to bring back just a little bit of color, so you can even make adjustments after you've made the adjustments to modify it a little bit more. Let's say about 80%. So we've still got a little bit of the background, but nowhere near as much as what we had before. Now what we're going to do is add a new color balance layer. Now, the same thing could be done here. We could put it in the group so that the color balance only applies to him and doesn't apply to the background, which you saw in Lightroom. You'd have to mask it there as well, but you have the options to do masks in Lightroom as well. We're going to go into Photoshop and we're going to say, okay, just like we had before, we got the shadows, the highlights, and the midtones. So what if those shadows were more blue? All right, so there's a huge over-the-top blue. Bring the highlights the other way. It looks awful. And that's why I said we're getting into things that are more of an art than before. So let's kick these to 0. Go back to these shadows and clear them out. Okay. Just like when we were doing the retouching of the muscle, we're looking for a subtle change. Just a little bit of blue. Maybe we'll bring just a bit of cyan into that. And as you can see, there's a scale: cyan to red, magenta to green, yellow to blue. Again, this is your color wheel. You saw that the wheel, the yellows and the blues were balanced against each other. Same thing happens here. So we've got a -4, so we went a little bit cyan and a +3 on the blue. So we'll come over here and we'll reverse that. So we'll go +4 on the cyan and -3 on the blue, which gets us to yellow. There's the before and there's the after. It adds just a little bit of what they do in most movies, just to kind of make the image pop a little bit more. And in a lot of ways, it makes it look more professional to do this. So we could do the same thing here with our other gentleman here, where I made him much brighter than the original image. He already has a black background. The stock photography had already pulled him out. So we've gotten the look of the vascularity and the musculature done. Go and add another color balance. And this time, we're going to reverse things. So we're going to go -3 and 4, just so you can see how this would work if you reversed the image. 3 -4. Now, these are the numbers that came from the other image. I'm doing it just as a quick change. This is not something you would typically do unless it was a series of the same image with the same uh, background, the same everything. And you'll notice that the change is really nothing. So we change that back over to 4. We change this to -3 for the highlights. In the shadows, we do 3. And -4. And I don't think we're going to see much. It's just a subtle change to it. But for this image, we probably need to go a little bit more blue. Maybe up to 10. I'm going to take this out completely. So I think there's already enough red in the image to begin with. Highlights the same thing. Take it out. So just a little bit more of the yellow, maybe. Let's see what we've got. And you can see how subtle a change it is. It just makes the shadows a little bit more, puts more emphasis on the shadows themselves. Gives him a little bit of yellow. And if we went to our initial photograph that we started with here and used the same technique here, we could, and this is where it gets important when we see how the color change happens from the contrast. We could just say, okay, let's just give her a little bit of yellow. To give her a little bit more of a tan look and not look as cold as it did before. And then we can play stack it by stacking a second color balance on top of it. We then put that change in place that we've used before for the cinematic type. I'm not going to go quite as much for this. You'll notice that I'm making that other modification to it, to the image, brought the suit back to the color that it was originally. So if we take everything off, you can see that we made the suit a little blue from the last set of changes that I made. Now the suit's back to the color that it was before, which was done by this step. Made her a little on the yellow side, so let's just back that off just a bit. All right, now is to adjust the skin tone. And now we come in and we make the final adjustment to add that blue in to the shadows. And we're done. We can increase the image. And we can see the change that took place in her face. Going back to the original image. And then we're back. Notice the eyes didn't change at all. We've fixed the suit back to the original color. And we're back to pretty much her original skin tone. We go back up to the original image here. And compare the two. You can see now that that's more like the original image. And that the skin tone matches more closely the original. So now we've got them side by side. And you'll see that the corrections that I made for the skin tone removed the changes that had happened because of the contrast changes from the original pictures. And the contrast was put there to help bring out the musculature without us having to do much in the way of painting, although there were other things that were applied to it as well. But you'll notice now that on the left is the picture we just edited in or in Photoshop, and there's the original untouched stock photo. And you can see how much the musculature is improved. The face hasn't changed because I purposely removed the face from the sharpening stuff, most of the face, so that I wouldn't be making any changes to it. But you can see that her muscles show up much better. All that detail and definition is there. And we've had the application of that blue and yellow cinematic to it. And you can see the difference that it makes in the image, so that we have a final image that looks ready to go on a magazine cover. So I hope you guys found this helpful. I apologize for the slew of messages that are that popped up. So I'm going to clear those off. But I hope you guys found this helpful and interesting. Give you a little idea of some of the work that goes on behind the scenes to take a original image and move it from there to something that's ready to go on the cover of a magazine. So that's it for the stream this evening, and I'll talk to you guys next week.